Slovenia, Malta, Sierra Leone, and Bulgaria.
South Africa had the temerity to bring us to the ICJ, charging us with genocide against, really in the service of a genocidal organization. Now, the worst thing that I can say is this, that many of the charges, false and unfounded, that were leveled against us in The Hague were brought by UNRWA officials. And we have discovered in the last few weeks that UNRWA officials were complicit in the massacre. And I think it's time that the international community and the UN itself understand that UNRWA's mission has to end. UNRWA is self-perpetuating. It is self-perpetuating also in its desire to keep alive the Palestinian refugee issue. And we need to get other UN agencies and other aid agencies replacing UNRWA if we're going to solve the problem of Gaza as we intend to do.
UNRWA has not received. The Secretariat is at the disposal of any.
Le Conseil de sécurité va maintenant aborder l'examen du.
I am firmly one of those appalled by the allegations, the accusations, not the accusations, but the idea that some UNRWA employees were allegedly involved in the attack of Israel on the 7th of October. I have seen the movie. These allegations, as we heard yesterday from the Secretary General, are being swiftly looked into, are being addressed transparently, and I'm very pleased to note, and I've had many conversations with Philippe Lazzarini and others, that UNRWA has taken swift action on this evidence, and an investigation is already underway. But UNRWA's life-saving services, as was mentioned by so many member states yesterday, to over 3/4 of Gaza's residents, should not be jeopardized by the alleged actions of a few individuals. It is a matter of extraordinary disproportion.
Et je donne à présent la parole à Monsieur Martin Griffith.
It's tragic to think that the small steps that we have been observing and that we discussed in closed session the other day on Syria are at risk because of these events. And they keep mounting, and we've also heard challenges. Our humanitarian response for the occupied Palestinian territory is dependent, completely dependent, on UNRWA being adequately funded and operational. And you can be sure that we will all be spending all our efforts to try to make this happen, and to make it happen in a way that meets the requirements of neutrality and assurances to those interested. UNRWA is playing an indispensable role in terms of distribution, warehousing, logistics, human resources, 3,000 staff responding to the current crisis. Our Deputy Humanitarian Coordinator for Gaza is the UNRWA Director for Gaza, because we chose him because he had the greatest knowledge of what was happening and the greatest reach of what might be used. So, of course, we would like to see decisions to withhold funds to UNRWA revoked. Ministry of Health, the vast majority being women and children. And health institutions have become a target of all things, as well as humanitarian aid workers of all people. So I reiterate my call for the immediate release of all hostages. I have met them and their families as well. Unconditional release, humane treatment, and of course, I cannot end without repeating the appeal of our Secretary General for a humanitarian ceasefire so that we can start rebuilding Gaza and giving its families a sense of a future.
The disturbing and, according to the Secretary General, credible allegations that 12 UNRWA employees were involved in Hamas's October 7th attack on Israel have shaken confidence in UNRWA at a moment that calls for scaled-up humanitarian assistance. The United States appreciates the seriousness with which the Secretary General has approached these allegations. Terminating the employment contracts of the involved personnel was a crucial first step, and we know the Secretary General has pledged to pursue further accountability, including comprehensive, independent review of UNRWA. This investigation needs to be swift, thorough, and credible. Colleagues, the United States has long been the leading donor of UNRWA. We know that this agency provides life-saving services under incredibly challenging circumstances in Gaza, and it contributes to regional stability and security through its work in the West Bank, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. For this reason, and for the sake of the millions of Palestinian civilians who depend on UNRWA's services, it is vital that the UN take quick and decisive action to hold accountable anyone guilty of heinous actions and to strengthen oversight of UNRWA's operations and begin to restore donor confidence. The United States' decision to temporarily pause our funding for UNRWA was made independently from other donors. Let me be clear, it was not a punitive measure, but it is a wake-up call. We need to see fundamental changes at UNRWA to prevent this from happening again. Thank you, Madam President. Good morning. A sustainable cessation will reunite the hostages with their loved ones, and it will allow critical humanitarian assistance to reach Palestinians in need. The United States has been working tirelessly with Qatar, Egypt, and other regional partners to reach an agreement that would see the hostages come home. Hostages, this Council has repeatedly urged Hamas and other groups to release, and who the court agrees should be freed immediately and unconditionally. The proposal on the table is strong, and it is compelling. It envisions a much longer humanitarian pause than we saw in November, and it would allow for us to get the hostages out and more life-saving food, water, and medicine into Gaza. Thank you to all, and thank you to Undersecretary General Griffiths for the last months have been nothing short of devastating. But I hope this moment, in which the international community has united behind Special Coordinator Cog, can be galvanizing. We have much more diplomacy ahead of us, but the path to begin de-escalating this conflict, to begin laying the foundation for a durable peace, is clear. That is what Israelis and Palestinians deserve: a two-state solution in which both live side by side with equal measure of peace, security, and dignity. And let us all commit to making that vision a reality.
On the camp came.
République de Corée de sa déclaration et je donne
In dealing with the Israeli allegations against some UNRWA staff, one should never lose sight of these realities and of Israelis' stated goal for years now of dismantling UNRWA. And they succeeded one time during the Trump administration of denying funding for UNRWA for more than 3 years. There are serious allegations, and there is a serious investigation. The principles of humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence must be upheld. And it is clear that UNRWA and the Secretary General are committed to these principles, and there is no reason to doubt this commitment. There is no reason to preempt the outcome of the investigation or to take measures that effectively amount to the collective punishment of 30,000 UNRWA staff and millions of refugees, beneficiaries of UNRWA services. UNRWA is the perfect example of the success of the UN. For those who are discovering UNRWA today, in the West, you created UNRWA in 1949 because you had the majority of members in the UN. It's a remarkable success story of multilateralism. It is, we should all of us be proud that we have an organization like UNRWA in the UN system that has been doing a remarkable job in servicing in a humanitarian way the millions of the Palestinian refugees for 75 years. It is our collective duty to protect it, to fund it, to allow it to carry its humanitarian, mandate, especially in these days. Who else is in Gaza from the humanitarian institutions that can implement what you legislated in 2 resolutions in the Security Council, if you do not have the army of the brave 13,000 staff of UNRWA to implement what you want them to do, particularly in distributing and allowing massive amount of humanitarian assistance to get to every corner of the Gaza Strip. But do not fall in the trap of the Israeli government that want to destroy UNRWA. And they made that crystal clear over the years. Defend this brave organization, this fabulous example of multilateralism and the success story of the United Nations. It is crystal clear that the provisional measures adopted by the court are binding. At the time where the Palestinian people are being deliberately deprived of the requirements of life, of what they need for their survival in Gaza, undermining UNRWA would be inhumane, cruel, and irresponsible. Since you all recognize the importance of UNRWA's role and its invaluable contribution, I trust that those who decided to suspend their funding will speedily revise their decision. We appealed to you yesterday, and we supported the appeal of the Secretary General for those to reconsider, because UNRWA deserves to be funded by those who have been doing a great job in funding over so many years, and we always express our gratitude to you for your generosity in funding UNRWA.
On October 7th, an actual genocidal terrorist organization Israel welcomes the decision of many countries to suspend their funding to UNRWA and calls for an in-depth, independent and transparent investigation into the agency's conduct in the Gaza Strip, both regarding the involvement of UNRWA employees in the October 7th massacre and regarding the employment of Hamas operatives and the involvement of terrorist elements in its activities. Madam President, incredibly, the Security Council has convened again and again to discuss the situation, to discuss the spin and distortions of Hamas's supporters, and yet it still has been unable to condemn the massacres of October 7th by the genocidal terrorists of Hamas, their genocidal incitement, or their reprehensible terrorist strategy that causes untold suffering to both Israeli and Palestinian civilians. Until it does, this Council will fail to meet its responsibilities. It will continue to be abused as a forum where lies can be told, where the law can be manipulated to serve its greatest violators, where the victims of terrorism will feel abandoned, and where, in the words of Judge Barak at the ICJ, the crimes of Cain can be attributed to Abel.
D'Israël de sa déclaration et je donne maintenant